Hey guys, I'm back with my report on my round three game from the 2021 Jack Taylor Memorial. Um, so just to give a quick recap, this was round three in the first day. So I was really tired. I had only slept 2 hours, waking up at 1 a.m. And this third round started at 7 p.m. So I was really tired, and I was actually debating whether I wanted to request a buy or not, like a last minute buy, because it was it was brutal. I mean, three classical games in one day, especially with having only slept 2 hours and being up since 1 p.m. is insane, or 1 a.m. is insane. But I decided to play it. Um, okay. So my opponent was Henry Yang. I hadn't played him before, but I've seen him in many of my past tournaments pre-pandemic. He's usually sitting next to me or a few boards away because he's similarly rated and always in my section. But I've never played him. I've noticed that he often gets really low on time, like he thinks very, very long. I remember that from past tournaments, but that's pretty much the only thing I know of him, that he's like a really deep thinker and solid. I'm really bad at guessing ages, but I'm thinking he might be around, it's really hard to say, maybe 17, 16 or 17 or 18, something like that. Just to give you an idea of things. I didn't have any time to prepare because after round two, I basically ate and rested for a little bit, and then proceeded to go back down to the tournament hall and play round three. Okay, I've got my score sheet here so that I can explain some of the because I record how long each move was spent on. Okay, so I might reference that a little bit here. Okay, so after being black for the rounds 1 and 2, I was finally white. And, whoops. I played e4. He played e5. Knight f3. Knight c6. Bishop b5. And already I was getting a bit nervous because recently I made a repertoire change in my Roy, which was to actually accept the Marshall. And it's a relatively recent repertoire change, so I'm not super confident in that yet because I just haven't had much practice against it. So I wasn't sure what I was going to do if we played the Marshall. Was I going to accept it? Was I going to play an anti-Marshall? I hadn't decided yet, but I thought, this might happen. So that's going to be a big decision for me to make. So a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles, bishop e7. And this is all theory, and I'm thinking, oh boy, I bet it's going to be a Marshall, and I'm going to have to make a decision. I hadn't decided yet what I was going to do. I was just going to wait and see if he does play the Marshall, but I was pretty sure he was going to. Rook e1, b5, bishop b3, and dun 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 dun. He didn't go for a Marshall. I was very surprised and relieved because a Marshall in a classical game against a prepared opponent, oh boy, it's scary stuff. So yeah, my Marshall just wasn't quite practiced enough. So any future opponents, if you're watching this, hopefully by my next tournament, I'm going to really have that Marshall in. So, but I was relieved to see d6. So we have the closed Roy here. c3, castles, all still theory, h3. And I had an inkling. I just had a feeling. I'm like, I bet he's going to play the Briar. I don't know why. I had no rationale for it. It's not even, I mean, it's one of the main lines, but it's not like the most common is knight a5 according to the database here. But I just thought, I bet you he's going to play the briar. I just saw him playing knight b8, and yeah, he played knight b8. So, which is kind of funny. I hadn't actually faced the briar in a long time, like over 2 years. I think it's fair to say, possibly 3 years. Like I haven't seen it in forever. So that's a bit of an issue. I mean, I remembered some stuff about it, but it's just been so long since I've actually played against it. I played d4, which is the main line, and he played knight bd7, which for those of you watching that don't understand the point of knight b8, which is well-known theory. The main idea is, I mean, one is to reroute the knight to d7, but the main idea is really for black to be able to push c5. So he played knight bd7. I started the Roy Lopez knight transfer to come into g3, preferably f5 if black lets us. And he played bishop b7. Still all theory. I think at this point I had spent no time on my clock, due to increment. I had as much time as I started with. My opponent actually had been playing really slowly. I told you he's a really slow player. If it was online, it might be a little bit suspicious because he already spent 7 minutes of his time getting here. And this is all theory, so it's a little strange, but he's just he just takes his time. So here I played bishop c2 because basically we want to defend d4 or e4 so that we can proceed with our knight maneuver. He played rook e8, knight f1, just proceeding. Again, still all mainline theory of the briar. And then he played bishop f8, which is by far the main line. And I'm like, oh boy, like he knows what he's doing. I mean, I knew he was a strong player. Because I knew from his past results and just the way he plays and the way he looks at the board, I knew he was a strong player, but I'm like, oh boy, this is move 13 and he's still playing theory and bishop f8. Boy. So I played knight g3, continuing with our plan, and he plays g6 here, stopping knight f5. It also gives his bishop a better square to go to, but mainly it's to stop f5. And at this point, I spent a total of 3 minutes, and yeah, he didn't spend any time on these last few moves. So here, this is the first time that I gave this a little bit of a think on move 15. I spent 4 minutes here, because this is actually where I forgot theory. I knew a couple of tiny ideas, but basically this is where I forgot my theory on move 15. So I had to think here. I ended up playing the main line and objectively the best move, which was a4. So basically creating a new area of attack. I think that's kind of a Karpovian type move where he's attacking. He attacks on one side and then he attacks on the other side, and then he attacks over here or over there. So yeah, just breaking on a4. In analyzing the game afterwards, there's a couple of other good alternatives that I looked up in ChessBase and with a deep dive with Stockfish. There's b3, which is actually, I think, the top move by Stockfish by like a hair, and I think the idea is bishop b2, and I think it wants to grab some space with these pawns, but it's a little bit, I think that's a bit advanced, and it didn't seem super comfortable for me. So like in the future, I don't want to give away what I'm going to play in the future, but how many future opponents is going to watch my little YouTube channel? But yeah, b3 just doesn't really seem like something that I'm interested in. And then bishop g5 is actually a move that Bobby Fischer, sorry, I do the bug here, that Bobby Fischer popularized He wasn't the first one to play it, but he popularized it in his 1992 rematch with Spassky. He played 3 games of this in that rematch. He played bishop g5 each time, and the computer really likes this as well. The idea is to provoke h6 and then bring the bishop back, and then have that as a weakness later on. And that's very appealing. Like I'm probably going to play a4 in the future, but bishop g5 it's a close second choice for me. Anyways, I played a4. So far I played perfectly, objectively speaking, and things were all good. And here, my opponent thought for a freaking long time. He thought for 20 minutes on this move, or 18 if you want to be exact. Was it 18? No. Yeah. Sorry. 18 minutes, which is a long time, for one move. So obviously this is where he forgot, like this is where his theory ended. Unless, it had to have been where it ended, because I don't think he would have been ready for bishop g5 or b3 either, because a4 is by far the main line, like by far. So, but yeah, he thought for a long time here, 18 minutes. And then he played a move which was a slight inaccuracy. Not really a popular line and not so great. The main line is c5, which was the whole point of the Breyer. There's also some other options in the database. There's bishop g7, c6, but really c5 is by far the best move. And then white should close things with d5. Whoops. But instead he decided to open things up. He wanted to open up his light squared bishop. And I took back with the pawn because I wanted to keep control of the center. And he played the best move here, which yeah. And then he on this next move he spent another 10 minutes. So he spent almost 30 minutes on 2 moves. I told you he thinks a long time. But yeah. Like I was starting to feel a bit of confidence here, because he was taking so long, like 30 minutes on 2 moves, and my position felt pretty good. So, but he did play the best move, which was c5 now. And unfortunately, I made a blunder. Now, objectively speaking, after this move, the evaluation is still pretty equal. Black has like a tiny edge. But I go from an advantage. Like if I put the engine on here, it's about +1 if I make the right move, and the move I made, it's like, yeah, it's about 130 centipond difference, or around there, 100 to 120 centipond difference. So, but there's another thing, is that the fundamental idea of I missed the whole point of this opening, which was this is the closed Roy, so we should close it, right? White wants to close the center because white usually has a little bit, just slightly more options on a kingside attack. So I should have closed things down, knock out this bishop, knock out, yeah. I considered it, but I was scared of like d5 and d4 squares. I thought those might become weak, and I just got nervous about that. Like if he ever knocks out d4, then or e4, then d5 is going to fall. And I for some reason I thought d5. I thought he could maybe play knight e5, like this. And I just got nervous about this. I thought we have a backwards pawn, but the computer is suggesting like bishop f4. And it's fine with this position. This bishop is still a bit awkward, and yeah. So I just wasn't experienced enough with that, but that's why I didn't play d5. So instead, I took on c5, and he took with the knight. And here I thought for a long time, and I made another mistake. Oh God, yeah. I spent, what, I think 12 minutes on this move. Yeah, so I'm very materialistic, and I didn't want to give up this pawn. Um, the best move was to just ignore it, just to write it off. It's like you've misplayed things a little bit. You just give up that pawn. I decided to try to hang on to it, and I played Queen D4, adding another defender. I saw Bishop G7, and my plan was to go Queen B4. And what happened was, this is actually what happened in the game: Queen G7 and Queen B4, hanging on to the defense of E4. I saw A5, and I was going to take on B5. And then if he takes on E4, it's a pawn for a pawn, and I'm okay with that. Unfortunately, this is just a straight up blunder I made, because I simply overlooked, and I blame at least half the reason I made this mistake was due to fatigue. Again, the lack of sleep, and at this point it was already like probably 8 p.m. But yeah, so my opponent played A5, and I'm like, what? And then, then I realized, oh my God. Yeah, so just a big blunder on my part, because we can't take on B5 because of Bishop A6, and our queen is lost, right? If we go Queen C6, then he can just go Rook C8, I think, and our queen is lost. So that was terrible, because there was no need for that. So I mean, I just, there wasn't anything I could do, so I just brought the queen back to D2 and hope that there's some miracle that I could pull out here. But basically, I kind of realized, that most likely I'm going to lose this game. I made two mistakes. I made the mistake of not closing the center when I took on C5, and then I made the mistake of Queen D4. But that's, yeah, so the computer, instead of Queen D4, it just wants to completely ignore this pawn, just write it off. So like Bishop G5 or A takes B5, something like this. And it just wants to ignore this pawn. It's saying like Knight D4, but it just wants to get, and if black takes, I'm just looking, I guess there's going to be some counterplay for white. So that was my mistake, but trying to hang on to it. Unfortunately, my queen just had nowhere to run after Bishop G7. Okay, so he played, oh yeah, sorry, I wanted to talk about this. Well, you can see what he played. And this shows the strength of my opponent, because B4 is a positional move. And I thought, yeah, maybe he'll play B4. But this is really hard, because black can guarantee himself a pawn. He could take on A4, or he could take on E4. Those are free pawns, no strings attached. And if he goes B4, he's saying, no, I don't really want a pawn. I'd rather just kind of box you in further. And it's a hard move to make. I mean, if I was black, yeah, I would be considering this as well. But to actually play it is another story. I don't know if I would be able to play it. I think I might want to grab a pawn. But he played B4. I guess at this point I should mention, or should I save that for the end? I might as well say it now. So my opponent in the first round, I forget if it's draw or win. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to open up another window. I want to look this up. I want to tell you what happened. So at the end of this tournament, my opponent gained 200 points. 200 points over the board rating. He's over 1,700 now. He's at almost 1,800. And just give me 1 second. I'm in another window here. Yeah, he's 1,740 now. So in the first game, of the tournament, the first round, sorry, he beat a 2000 rated player. Remember, this is over the board rating, right? He beat a 2000 rated player at first round, and in round 4, he drew a 2100 rated player, and in the 5th round, he drew a 1900 rated player. So yeah, he drew a 2100 and beat a 2000. I mean, so that's who I'm facing against. I also, something else I should mention in the tournament is a 1400 rated player placed 3rd in the open section. Underrated Orama. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Okay, anyways. Oh yeah, and a 1500 gained another 1500 gained 200 points as well. Oh no, it was even lower rated. I forget. But basically, there's a lot of underrated players. Which there's a 1500 in my section who's actually 2400 on Lichess. So it's tough out there. Okay, sorry. So getting back to the game, this is a long video, I know. Okay, so yeah, so after b4, I played queen f4, just continuing to hang on to this pawn. But at this point, I mean, there's not really much I can do anyways. So I played queen f4. Oh, unfortunately, you guys see the little, I wonder if I can I turn those off? How come it shows that? Oh, there. Oh, wow, cool. Okay, I turned it off because otherwise it gives away some stuff. But okay, so he played queen c7, and I played e5, which was, the computer says it's a mistake, but I'm already losing here. So I mean, every move is losing. Okay, so he took, rook takes, knight d5. He's attacking my rook and my queen, so I trade rooks. And then I had to, this was a bit of a choice. Do I want to trade queens here? I thought if I don't trade queens, b3 is coming, and that could be an issue. And he's also like, he's facing, like his queen is nicely placed. And if I take, then he has to kind of retreat one of his minor pieces. So, and I thought if I get to a queenless endgame, I might have better chances to draw. So I did trade. And then I played bishop e3. And my opponent made a mistake here, or a blunder. You know, a knight on the rim is grim, but he did play knight a6. It's kind of uncharacteristic of my opponent. But maybe I'm guessing he might have maybe gotten a little bit complacent here because you know, he's winning. At this point, he was a little bit low on the clock too. He was down to 17 minutes at this point. So he was in a bit of time trouble. I had 46 minutes, he had 17. But yeah, a knight on the rim is grim, and now these superfluous knights, they're you know, it's hard for them to move. Okay. But no worries, because I blundered right back, and this was a big blunder. At this point, I actually had a chance to not come back completely, but I had a chance to put in a good fight. The b2 pawn is under attack, so Stockfish recommends that I simply defend it. You know, rook b1. Unfortunately, I made a blunder. I mean, I kind of, part of it was fatigue, part of it was I kind of threw in the towel after my other earlier mistakes. But I played bishop d4. And this is a mistake because of a pretty simple tactic which my opponent played. Bishop takes f3. And it gives him a desperado, because after I take on g7, he can now take on g2. He gets that extra pawn. And I have to take it, otherwise he's going to take h3. So he got that extra pawn there. I played b3, rook d8, rook d1, takes, this was all fine, f5. At this point, my opponent was down to 12 minutes, and I had 39. So I had a lot of time, and my opponent was in some time pressure. But he was picking up the pace a little bit, and this is just his style. He thinks a lot until the end game, and then he plays quickly in the end game. That's just how he plays. I played bishop e2, kind of cementing this knight. He brings in his king, f4, knight b8, bishop c4, knight bd7, king f3, knight b6, bishop g8, king g7. And this caught me off guard. I'm like, oops. I was a little surprised that my bishop had nowhere to go. But I mean, I had to go back to c4. But I had no other good moves anyways. So anyways, I went back to bishop c4. At this point, my opponent had 11 minutes, but he took. This was another good move, another brave move from my opponent, because if it was me, I think I would just take on a4 and cement these connected double passers. And I think I would do that. I mean, I would have considered b3, but it requires some careful calculation, right? Because the pawns are not connected anymore, and my knight is pretty close towards my king. But this is the best move, and he played it. Knight f1, and he finished the game with another solid move, the best move, knight e4, because now I can't go to d2. I can't kick out his knight, and this pawn just runs as a result. So here I've resigned. So I mean, a bit of a tough game. I don't mind losing it though, because there were three mistakes I made in the game, but honestly, I feel I deserve to lose, because in the Briar, when he played c5 here, I should have known. It's called the closed Roy, so I should have closed it with d5. I should have known that. Like I need a bit more practice in the Roy, obviously, because I shouldn't even have to think about that. That should be an automatic move. The queen d4 move, I let myself off the hook, because I think it's a little tricky. I forgive myself for that. And I mean here, I missed a5, so I should have played bishop g5. And I also, it was a mistake, but I also kind of forgive myself for that too. But there's not really an excuse for me taking on c5. I really should have closed it. There was actually this point too. This was another mistake right here, when I should have not traded this bishop because of this little maneuver, because now I just give up another pawn for nothing, and I ruin my pawn structure. If I had played rook b1, the evaluation is minus 1.4. So considering my opponent was in some, a little bit of time trouble, if I had played rook b1, I had some chances to draw. The best move is b3, and then the computer recommends like bishop d1. I mean, it's still unpleasant for white, but this would have given us our best chance. The computer says like if takes, and takes on a4. Again, not pleasant. I guess bishop c6. Oh, and then an exchange sack. This is what the computer is suggesting. I mean, this still looks really uncomfortable, but the eval is about minus 1.5 here. Not fun to play, but white can probably hang on. Like if I just play some more moves, we give the exchange stack back. It would have been my best chance though, because black still has to work here. So, yeah. So that was round 3. So as a recap, I lost the first game, I drew the second, and I lost the third game. Yeah, okay. Well, I will be back for round 4 in my next video. It'd be nice if my YouTube channel grew a little bit. It's like 3 years old and I still don't even have 500 subscribers, but that's just me whining. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.